I love 3D fighters, specifically along the lines of Tekken and Soul Calibur, but generally I find myself having a large fascination with other 3D fighters like Bloody Roar, Dead or Alive, and Rival Schools. Of course, by my examples you can tell I don't mean games like Dragon Ball Xenoverse, Gundam Versus, or My Hero 1 Justice. Not that I have a distaste for them, but I feel they belong in a different category altogether. One thing I'll say is that I love how different traditional 3D fighters feel from traditional 2D fighters. Today I'm going to be talking about all the reasons I prefer 3D fighters, as well as some of the differences between 2D and 3D, and other small analysis stuff. Remember, this is just my opinion for the most part, and I feel like I should make that clear because people like to get angry over the smallest things. Anyway, let's go over the first thing. Balance in 3D fighting games is definitely different than it is in 2D fighting games. I personally think it's because movement is fundamentally different, and because that moves that serve a similar purpose may have different properties altogether. Let me use a comparison of two similar moves. Nash? Yes, I'm using another Street Fighter reference again, I'm sorry, it's just that I've been playing it a lot so it's the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to references. Nash has a step kick that is a great tool for footsies. It has decent range, it's negative on block, but it's safe at the tip. On hit, you even get a mini combo, and because of the great horizontal range of this move, and the power it brings with it, it has to be negative on block, or Nash would have an extremely powerful tool to start pressuring. Now, let's go into our 3D example. Josie in Tekken 7 has a very similar move. The key difference though, is that it's slower, and that it knocks down on hit, and on block, it's +6. That's enough frame advantage to do whatever she wants to do. She could continue her pressure with her lows, or go for a counter hit launcher, or maybe a throw mix-up. The point is she's free to do whatever she wants after that move lands. On paper, this move is extremely broken, as Josie is extremely rewarded, both if the attack lands or is blocked. I mean, that does sound kind of broken, doesn't it? But what if I told you it's not?
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
As you can see, if you sidestep this move, she dies. Because of the nature of these games, the importance of the angle of your attack comes from dramatically changes its usefulness. On the flip side of the same coin though, depending on the angle, the direction you sidestep is important. Where one move might be safe to sidestep to the left, that same move might not be able to be stepped to the right, and so on. Of course, the angle and range is also important in 2D fighting games, but generally standing at the tip of your opponent's range and punishing it is the optimal way to deal with these kind of moves, rather than learning to evasively weave between them. Personally, I love the feeling of reading a steppable move and properly punishing it, and it's by far one of the most gratifying experiences I've had in fighting games in general. In another vein, stages are another vastly different feature from 2D to 3D, as they can make a considerable difference in gameplay. In most 2D fighting games outside of Smash games, the difference between stages is purely visual, making them serve only an aesthetic purpose and a fairly meaningless choice. Not that visuals aren't important at all, it just serves little to no purpose. In modern 3D fighters, there's a whole load of differences between stages, which can impact a character's effectiveness as well. From the stage's width, length, shape, and hazards including things like breakable walls, floors, or ledges, which as a whole, it can make a dramatic difference between characters. Again, using another Tekken 7 reference, Tekken 7's Kunimitsu is a character with an emphasis on extremely far wall travel. Because of how she's designed, her highest damage and combo routes, even without walls, require her to travel far distances. But on stages with smaller walls, her damage dramatically goes down, as opposed to a character like Gigas, whose highest damaging combos aren't hit with the same requirements that Kunimitsu has. Another thing that could be interesting are stage-specific combos. Because of the different properties of stages, certain characters can get unique combos or setups due to that stage's properties, such as this Howard Estate combo. Besides balance and stages, there are some other general differences you'll notice when playing 3D fighters. For one, there is a distinct lack of projectile-based characters in 3D fighters. While there may be some, they're usually a niche and not as widely used. In Granblue Fantasy Versus, out of the current 19 characters, 14 of the characters have projectile-type moves, while in Soul Calibur 6, only 6 of the 29 characters have a projectile of some kind. Another thing would be how 3D fighters often move slower than in 2D fighters. A typical light move in 2D fighters is often 3 to 5 frames fast, while equivalents in 3D fighters could be as slow as 8 to 11 frames. While this might not sound like a big difference, anyone who has played fighting games somewhat competitively can see how majorly different this is. Because 3D fighters have slower moves, generally, it is much easier to read what has happened, giving you more time to assess the situation in order to adapt, or more time to recognize a move that is punishable. There's also a huge difference in blocking. Typically, in 2D fighters, you crouch block unless you see the wind-up of an overhead, or see your opponent jump or air dash in. In 3D fighters, on paper, crouch blocking could also look like the ideal way to block as well, as it lets you block lows, avoid highs and throws, while only being able to be hit by mids. The dangerous thing, however, is that in most 3D fighters, mids are often the most dangerous moves your opponent can offer, as well as every character having a launch from mid. On the topic of blocking, pressure is also typically different. 2D fighters usually rely on block strings and links to form pressure, while generally speaking, there are no links or block strings in 3D fighters. If you've seen an anime fighter, you know those games heavily rely on long block strings to form pressure. In 3D fighters, links don't exist, so there is no consistent way to keep pressure like this constantly. If you were to keep pressing buttons, there's a high chance you get interrupted or counter hit launched. So instead, you have to give up pressure more often and try to read how your opponent is going to block. This allows both players to take turns quicker, as well as creating a constant state of tension of who's going to win neutral now. Very few characters can apply true constant pressure in 3D fighting games like they can in 2D. Something you might ask is, why aren't 3D fighters as popular as 2D fighters? To be honest, from my perspective, fighting games are already a niche genre in modern gaming, and 3D fighting games outside the Tekken series are a niche within the niche. Even Soul Calibur 6, a big name in the 3D fighting genre, only has around 400 active players on Steam as of today. If I had to guess, it would be because of the differences between 3D and 2D. Most people start out on 2D fighters, so jumping the extra hurdle of getting comfortable with the 3D space can be jarring for a lot of incoming players. However, I hope this short video would be able to inspire some of you to try out a 3D fighting game. I really want to keep the genre alive, as it is my favorite kind of fighting game, and I love to see a resurgence in the various 3D fighting game communities out there. Alright, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe and leave a comment below. It helps out the algorithm quite a lot, and I want to see if I can hit 1k subs by the end of May, even if I'm sure that's a pipe dream. I am still working on the next Archetype Plus video, but I got pretty busy in late December, but I promise it'll come out like next week. Alright, take care.